Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and welcome to the breaking news. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon, link in the description below. Today we have breaking news coming from around the world, as we have been able to hear that the Yemeni Houthis, at the very moment that this video is being filmed, are currently conducting another attack against another merchant vessel within the southern Red Sea, once again showing that the Yemeni Houthis are now violating the international freedom of navigation laws, and once again starting to violate the American-led peace treaty, which was created on the heels of an American bombardment of the Yemeni Houthis that lasted for several months. We've also been able to hear significant news from the northern area of the Middle East, as we have been able to hear that the United States has been speaking to the Lebanese government about possibly confronting and dismantling Hezbollah from within the country of Lebanon itself, and have stated that there has apparently been some decent progress on making this aim achievable. Meanwhile, the HTS, the Tahrir AlSham, has been removed from the terrorist list inside the United States of America and is no longer designated a terrorist organization, at least at this moment. We have also been able to hear significant news coming out of East Asia, as we were able to see for the first time today that a Twin Sea J-20 was spotted within the People's Republic of China, suggesting that there is now a weapons officer on board the aircraft which is able to independently operate the J-20's weapon systems, removing a lot of difficulties of the command and control of the aircraft from the pilot and making the situation far more tenable for multi-role abilities on the J-20's airframe. Outside of that, we have also been able to hear that the Russian Federation has ended up conducting a monolithic purge, with the transportation secretary being killed just today, and we've also been able to hear of the arrest of the head of the Russian National Guard, or the Rosguardia. We've also been able to hear of significant fires inside of Yekaterinburg, and practically all Russian airports in St. Petersburg and Moscow have been closed for hours now, with flights being canceled after Ukrainian drone attacks began to enter the country once again and threaten these key areas around the city of Moscow and St. Petersburg. We are also getting additional details and information about the mysterious explosion of the merchant vessel, which exploded just off of the coast of Ust-Luga just yesterday. We have also been able to hear that the Russian Federation has reached out to Hungary and requested that the Hungarians join them in conducting actions to protect Russian people from different kinds of distaste or disliking within the Western world at large. We have also been able to hear that the Russian Federation has started a new offensive within the Zaporizhia plain near to the area of Huilopol, Orikiv, and Kamyanske, and we've also been able to hear at the exact same time of Estonian supply patrol boats being in service within the Ukrainian Navy. Today is a fairly large day for news coverage, and moving on into our largest piece of news, at least at the moment, we have been able to hear that the Yemeni Houthis have attacked another commercial vessel within the southern Red Sea just a short while ago. We have been able to hear that apparently a vessel has been attacked by multiple RPGs from small craft, which is very much similar to the attack that we were able to hear of just the other day. Just the other day, we were able to hear that the Magic Seas, a Liberian-flagged vessel, largely registered in Greece and owned by an Israeli company, had been attacked by the Yemeni Houthis that attacked on fast boats, firing RPGs at the vessel and then firing at it with anti-ship missiles. The crew was forced to abandon ship, and from what we know, the Magic Seas has sunk to the bottom of the sea, at least at this morning. We have been able to hear that apparently there is now a new UK MTO warning within the area, as the UK MTO has received several third-party reports of an incident 51 nautical miles west of Al Hodeida, and the vessel has been attacked by multiple RPGs from small craft, and the authorities are investigating. Vessels are advised to transit with caution and report any suspicious activity to the UK MTO. It does appear that at least at the moment, it is becoming quite obvious that a second vessel has been put under attack within the southern Red Sea, very much similar to that of the Magic Seas, which was hit yesterday by the Yemeni Houthis. We've actually been able to hear, speaking of the Magic Seas, that the Houthi military spokesperson, Yahya Saree, or Yahya Saree, whatever the hell his name is, said that the Magic Seas bulk carrier struck in the Red Sea yesterday has completely sunk. He also suggested that footage of the sinking ship may soon be released. It's once again showing us that the Yemeni Houthis are openly violating the laws of international freedom of navigation, which is supposed to be respected inside of international waters. The Yemeni Houthis have once again returned to conducting piracy on the high seas in the southern Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, and are attempting to stop the passage of any vessel through the Suez Canal, in larger part through these sorts of actions. This can have a significant impact on global economic supply chains and can greatly slow them down, lead to shortages in specific kinds of raw materials, or even in good products. We can also hear that there would be significant damage to the loss of vessels and possibly the loss of life, like we saw the Magic Seas yesterday, and we'll mostly be seeing with the vessel that's being attacked at this very moment right now. It is becoming incredibly clear that this action will not be resolved unless if the Yemeni Houthis are truly dealt with once and for all. Airstrikes have largely proven to be uneventful. Airstrikes have been conducted by the United States and Israel since the earlier part of 2024, and since about a year and a half ago, we have seen absolutely no change in the Yemeni Houthi stance, actions, or abilities in terms of attacking commercial shipping, attacking the state of Israel, attacking Saudi Arabia, or possibly even attacking and threatening U.S. naval interest and U.S. maritime interests within the region. It's becoming incredibly clear that an answer must be made that is not the same as the prior answers that so far are not working. Outside of the western region of Yemen and the attacks that we've been able to hear of within the southern Red Sea so far, we have also been able to hear of significant action still being conducted by the United States against the Houthis, as we were able to hear that the U.S. Special Envoy Tom Barak said that we just had an amazingly interesting and satisfactory meeting. We are grateful for the speed and balanced tone in the Lebanese response to our proposals. And at least according to information that we have been able to hear, it appears that the Lebanese president has presented a response to the U.S. proposal to disarm Hezbollah. In my honest opinion, this is going to go absolutely nowhere. The Lebanese government likes to pretend that they are not friends with Hezbollah and they'd like to see them gone, but they've been on this dog and pony show for a couple of years now. It's become incredibly obvious that the Lebanese government has no ability to control Hezbollah and they have no ability to crush them. And as a matter of fact, it's more so Hezbollah that runs the country, and then the Lebanese government largely takes a junior or minor role to that of Hezbollah inside the borders of Lebanon. For this reason, I have a feeling that while the U.S. Special Envoy believes that there's some promise, there is really no actual ability for this to go anywhere rather than talking. And that's generally why we've seen that Hezbollah is pretty nonchalant about the whole issue, because the truth of the matter is that Hezbollah could overthrow the Lebanese government if they wanted to. The Lebanese government can't do that the other way around. Nevertheless, we have also been able to hear of developing U.S. foreign policy positions inside the Middle East, as the Tahrir AlSham, or the Hayat Tahrir AlSham, which was largely designated a terrorist organization for nearly over a decade, has actually been lifted from the terrorist registration in the United States of America. It does appear that this group, which was previously known as the Nusra Front, which was an al-Qaeda branch inside of Syria, has now been lifted completely off of the list. This is due to the fact that the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or the HTS, largely is the de facto government inside of Syria, at least at this point, led by al-Jilani. We are getting a general understanding as a result of this that the United States of America is attempting to soften their position on the HTS and also on the Syrian interim government, so that way we may see that the Syrian interim government starts to be more so neutrally aligned within the region, more so than pro-Iranian or pro-Russian, like it may be turning into eventually. It once again shows that the United States of America, at least at this point, is working with a great deal of caution, at least dealing with the Syrian interim government, and while we would like to try and ensure that they do not become a Axis-leaning state within the region, we are also not wanting to go all in to where we waste our time and resources on a country that may be inevitably heading in that path. This is largely showing us as well that the United States of America may be attempting to take this action as a sign to other proxy or terrorist forces in the region that the United States does not necessarily view them as their number one target or their number one enemy, at least in the modern decision-making process. That may also lead to a decrease in attacks by other groups like the al-Nusra inside of Iraq and others throughout the region, because it is becoming increasingly and more pressingly clear that the United States of America may be attempting to pursue a somewhat friendly path with the Syrian interim government. Nevertheless, the situation in the Middle East is a fairly difficult one, and it appears that at least for now, the Syrian interim government, the Yemeni Houthis, and the Lebanese are continuing to occupy the U.S. Department of State's actions within the area as we continue to try and piece together how to move forward in the region, as the Islamic Republic of Iran is clearly still attempting to nuclearize their country by all actions necessary. Moving on out of the Middle East temporarily, and moving us on over into East Asia, we've also been able to hear of the arrival of a twin-seat J-20 inside the the People's Republic of China. We were apparently able to hear that the J-20, or the twin-seat J-20, has actually been in service now for a short while, but this is the first time we've ever seen pictures of it or it's ever made a public appearance. But a twin-seat J-20 is starting to suggest that there is now a weapons officer or a weapons systems operator on board the aircraft that is able to take over control of most of the aircraft's weapon systems while the pilot focuses on actually flying the aircraft. This is a fairly decently large development, but it is also one that is showing that the People's Republic of China is attempting to start to turn the J-20 into a multi-role aircraft, which is something that we have generally understood it is not capable of doing. This aircraft is largely understood to be some sort of a stealth fighter, not a stealth multi-role aircraft like the F-35. This is something that is starting to make it a little bit questionable as to what kind of necessity there is to have a weapons system operator on board, considering that the aircraft cannot conduct any multi-role operations. Probably one of the most famous and modern multi-role aircraft here in the West would be the Boeing F15EX Eagle, which actually does have a pilot and a weapons systems operator. But that's primarily because the F-15EXs actually have a reason for a weapons system operator. It is a multi-role aircraft, and that means it is able to conduct air-to-air and air-to-ground weapons operations. That also means that, at least as far as conducting air-to-ground operations, which are usually far more meticulous and tedious than that of air-to-air operations, at least as far as how the weaponry works, you would generally need a weapons systems operator on board to be able to handle those air-to-ground weaponry and air-to-ground ordnances, unlike you would on an air superiority fighter, like, say, the F-22 or the F-35 even, which technically is also a multi-role, which only has a singular pilot. This is something that is suggesting to us that the People's Republic of China has noted that apparently, at least with how their weapon systems are currently working on board the J-20, the air superiority weapons themselves may be too difficult to handle for the pilot, or operating the aircraft in itself may be so difficult that to get any kind of level of efficiency out of the aircraft's operations, a second weapon systems officer had to be added on board to be able to try and make sure that the pilot is able to manage on actually operating the aircraft. Either way, this development is not making too much sense, and at least here in the West, you will never see that a purebred air superiority fighter like this would ever have a tandem cockpit or a twin-seat cockpit for a pilot and a weapons systems operator. You only see that on multi-role aircraft, and considering that this is not a multi-role aircraft, it is suggesting that there is some sort of a lack of efficiency with either flying the aircraft or a lack of efficiency in using the weapons systems, requiring them to divest the role into two independent people on board the aircraft instead of a singular one pilot. Nevertheless, moving on from that information and on into the far east of Russia in Kamchatka, we've also been able to hear that the Russian Federation has cut off all mobile internet in the entirety of the Kamchatka region to protect against quote-unquote possible drone attacks. This region is 7,500 kilometers from Ukraine, or roughly about 5,000 miles. The idea of a drone attack happening in the Kamchatka Peninsula sounds absolutely absurd, but considering that a Ukrainian attack did occur not too long ago, as a matter of fact, near to the area of Lake Baikal, near to Irkutsk, it is entirely possible that Ukrainian drone attacks could have happened quite literally anywhere and everywhere. That attack was around 3,000 miles away and was a part of Operation Spiderweb, but it is also likely that Operation Spiderweb, or a similar sort of an operation to it, could happen again literally anywhere in the country. And it does appear that, at least at the moment, the Russian Federation is believing that there is a high chance that there could be an attack on the Kamchatka Peninsula at some point in the future by some sort of style of this Ukrainian drone attack. We'll have to wait and see exactly how that turns out and what is developing with that situation, because so far we haven't been able to hear of any attacks, any threat of attacks, or anything else along those lines, and there isn't really a large amount of strategic targets that you would find within the Kamchatka Peninsula on any given daily basis. But we have also been able to hear other major developments inside of the Russian Federation, or more so, major developments that are happening with the Russian Federation and their surrounding neighbors, as we have been able to hear that Russian propagandists are beginning to spin the same stories about Azerbaijan and the independence of Azerbaijan as they were about Ukraine before the war in Ukraine began. We have been able to hear that apparently they are stating that the independence of a state like Azerbaijan makes as little sense as Ukraine. And this is coming from some fairly large Russian military bloggers inside the country, which is once again showing us that the Russian Federation is attempting to expand its aggressionist stance to any country that was a part of the former Soviet Union or a former part of the Warsaw Pact that ever tries to take an action that it secures their interest while at the same time putting Russia's interest on the side burner. To note the specific part of importance, platforms against which independent Azerbaijan is as absurd as the so-called Ukraine. Let us recall that according to the imperial census of 1897, there were no Azerbaijanis on the territory of Russia. There were Caucasian Tatars. It does appear that once again, the Russians are starting to push the narrative that Azerbaijan technically doesn't exist or shouldn't exist, and it is an affront to the Russian state that they even exist at all. This is coming after the fact that the Azerbaijani-Russian relations have completely collapsed as of recently, and it does appear that the Azerbaijanis may be threatening the flow of Russian oil out of Azerbaijan and into the rest of the greater world at large, considering that one of the last operational pipelines that the Russians have access to, at least within this European region, travels through Azerbaijan itself. It does appear that the Russian Federation most likely views this to be a major strategic issue, and for that reason, they may actually be supporting or planning some kind of an operation to begin a war with Azerbaijan. That would not be easily done, just to put that out there, but we will have to wait and see how poorly done it actually would be if they ever gave that a shot. Outside of that, and inside of Yekaterinburg, we also were able to see that a large warehouse was on fire earlier today, which I'll show you all the clip of right here. The fire was quite extensive, and from what we largely understand, this warehouse was housing some sort of Russian military equipment or vital supplies that could be used in the Russian war effort. We could see a large amount of firefighters in Russia doing their best job that they ever can, which is to stand around and watch, which is generally what the Russian fire department is the best at. They're not really good at putting out the fires, they just like to watch them. We see the fire continuing to consume the inside of the building, as other parts near to the rear of the building actually cave in from the scorching heat and the damage that was caused to the internal support structures of the building. That's the end of that clip, but still showing us the significant damage that did occur inside of Yekaterinburg. Outside of that, we've also been able to hear the Ukrainian drone attacks have ended up shutting down most of all of Russia's major airports today, as flights were canceled inside of St. Petersburg, and flights were also canceled inside of Moscow as well. You can actually see thousands of people having to wait around after their flights were canceled inside of St. Petersburg. Meanwhile, further down in Moscow, we also were able to hear that flights were canceled down here as well. Even more interesting is that while all of these flights have been canceled and the Russian Federation is under another large Ukrainian drone attack, the Russian Federation is continuing on with one of the strongest and most hardline purges that we've ever seen so far while Vladimir Putin has been the president of Russia. We've actually been able to hear that the Russian economy is in a free fall at the moment as well, which appears to be quite bad. The Russian budget deficit has already hit about $47 billion in the first half of 2025, already matching the full year target of 1.7% of Russia's GDP, according to a Reuters report. This is absolutely catastrophic, and this is showing that Russian governmental spending is spiraling wildly out of control, far out of the reach or ability of the Russian government, as they are continuing to fight a war that is pretty much a losing one for them on the economic front. Outside of that, we've also been able to hear that the Russian transport minister, who was just relieved several hours ago from his position, was found dead with a gunshot wound to the head. And from what we are hearing at the moment, it appears that the Russian media is calling this an offing of oneself, but from what we can generally understand, it does appear that this is another purge that has been conducted by the Russian government, as we have never seen anyone who has been relieved from Putin's government be so distraught that they would end up conducting an action as this. So we are considering that to be highly unlikely, and it appears to be another victim of the purge. We also were able to hear that the head of the National Guard earlier today, Viktor Striganov, has also been arrested as well. He is the former first deputy head of Russia's National Guard, and he has been arrested at this moment in time today. According to the Kremlin, he is involved in cases of embezzlement of hundreds of millions of dollars during the construction of a military training ground near Novosibirsk. And it appears that this is generally a cover-up, and it's highly likely that Viktor Striganov was a part of some sort of a anti-Putin meeting, or it was found out that he had anti-Putin sentiments, and for this reason, and the fact that he holds a significant amount of control over the Russian National Guard, he was arrested and is most likely going to be held in prison for the remainder of his life, or he will eventually be purged, much like the transport minister who was just purged earlier ago, a couple of hours ago, as of today. Moving on from that and into the rest of the news we have in Moscow, we also were able to hear that a chemical and munitions plant was actually destroyed near to Moscow. You can actually see a mushroom cloud rising after the explosion, and it appears that the Krasnozavodsk chemical plant near Moscow was hit. This factory produces explosives and ammunition, and in particular, thermobaric munitions for warheads on the Garan 2s. It does appear that this factory was hit and took some significant damage from a Ukrainian drone attack, which is also showing us that the state of Ukraine is continuing to get successful hits with their drone forces, and occasionally a rare hit like this one within the Moscow air defense perimeter, which is very impressive that the drone was able to make it through the air defense perimeter in the first place. Moving on from that and into the area of Ust-Luga, we've also been able to hear of a mysterious explosion, or more so a continued story, on the mysterious explosion of the 6th Russian Shadow Fleet tanker, which has exploded just outside of Ust-Luga this Sunday, which was yesterday, costing millions in lost revenue and their transport minister his job, or at least that's supposedly what happened, and then he was purged a little bit later. We have also been able to hear of some other major developments inside of Hungary, as the Russian Federation has actually reached out to Hungary through Sergei Lavrov, it's suggesting that they stop the persecution and killing of Russians, and claimed in an interview with Hungary's Magyar Nezmet that other ethnic groups are also being subjected to forced Ukrainianization. These included Poles, Hungarians, Romanians, Bulgarians, Armenians, Belarusians, and even the Greeks. Not the Greeks, but from what we can generally understand, this is of course the same BS that the Russian foreign minister has been putting out for a while. It may actually be attempting to create a divide between Hungary and the rest of Europe. While there is a lot to disagree with Viktor Orban and Hungary, at least from a Western standpoint, these sorts of statements and actions on an official public level may be trying to further divide and add salt into the wound that already exists between the estranged relationship of Hungary and the rest of NATO, the European Union, and the Western world at large at the moment. Outside of that news, we've also been able to hear in the southern front of Ukraine, at the Zaporizhia region, that for the first time in several years, the Russian Federation is now beginning a new offensive within the area, according to the commander of the 65th Brigade. Attacks have opened up across the wide area of the front near Pyatkivkanki, Stepove, Kamyanske, and Mali Sherbaki. It does appear that the Russians may be attempting to push forward and gain the key towns of Arikiv and Kamyanske and push towards Kamyshavaka, which is further up the highways away from the area of the active front line right now. We are not entirely sure if the Russians will ever be able to make any progress over the course of this year in this offensive that would be of significant nature, because it has become wildly clear at this point that any offensive actions taken on by either side usually fail. Defensive battles are the only winning battles at this point in the conflict, and so we'll be waiting to see if the Russians make any ground, but the chances of making ground are low, if any. We've also been able to hear, at least inside of the northwestern area of the Black Sea, that the Ukrainians are actually using Estonian-supplied patrol boats, the Renai class, which are now operating within the northwestern Black Sea. Both have received upgrades in Ukraine, including additional sensors and communication systems to make them more efficient at their job of coastal patrol, which these vessels were designed for. Outside of that, and inside the United States of America, we've also been able to hear that Benjamin Netanyahu just landed recently at Andrews Air Force Base directly outside of Washington, D.C., prior to his meeting and dinner, which will be occurring tomorrow with the White House and the President of the United States. So we will be expecting to get some sort of developments or information on the situation in the Middle East, and also the updated U.S. foreign policy stance after that meeting concludes, which should be concluding within the next day or two. Outside of that, that is all of the major breaking news that we have for the day. I have to thank you all so much once again for watching, and if you all have enjoyed, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We would love to have you all here. We make sure to put these videos out every single day whenever there's a large enough amount of news, and of course, I hope that y'all also hit that like button, and if you've really enjoyed this video, please make sure to go and support us on Patreon. The folks over on Patreon help us out incredibly in helping this channel to keep on running and making it financially possible. We have to give them a huge thanks, because if it wasn't for all the folks like them who went out of their way to support this channel, we would not be able to make it possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep this news running on a day-to-day basis as our full-time job. But a big thanks to all of y'all once again for watching, and we will see you all in the next one.